This car is the most honest car you ever see.
It's been a dream ever since I've had it.
The first time I heard that engine screaming, I thought, I gotta have one of those.
For me, the cars have personality.
What's great about a BMW Classic is the community that surrounds it.
When you listen to that, that's why we're here.
Welcome to Classic Heart, the BMW Group Classic Podcast. This is JP, and my guest today is an absolute pro in the world of content creation. And we had some content creators already in our show, but I'm super happy to have, in brackets, local one who reached out to an international audience. It's the Instagram channel tomsdrive, and with us today is Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hi, JP. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be on here and can't wait to have a little conversation with you.
And we are super excited that you can join us. And you are now in our studio in Munich. And Munich is also your home base. That's correct.
It is. Yes, I moved here about a year ago for an internship initially in the automotive sector as well. And ever since, I really enjoy this place as it's a very car-based city, I think.
We will jump into this one of the ranking of the cities because we have a dispute which is the coolest city in Germany, at least for car spotting. But we come to this point later. For those who might not know you, would you like to share a bit about yourself?
Of course. I'm Tom. I do content creation both on Instagram and TikTok. The handle's at tomsdrive. And yes, I like to take my followers on a bit of a journey, talk about cars, maybe make it a bit more personal. And I've been doing this for about a year now in the style that I'm doing it right now. And yes, it's very great to meet a lot of people like JP and so many others on this journey.
So what was the initial thing that you jumped so much into the car thing? I mean, you're young, but is it very back into your childhood?
First of all, there's no family background with cars. My family's not interested in cars at all. And if they're interested, that's just maybe because of me, I kind of sparked the interest with them. And to be honest, I can't really tell you. I think I was born with an interest in cars, I guess. And ever since I can remember, I've been just into cars a lot and couldn't stop looking to magazines, shows and stuff. So yeah, pretty much ever since. How about you?
With me, it started with a car crazy father who was very into French cars. So we had Citroëns. And then, one of my earliest childhood memories is that I was sitting on the window at home. And at that time, we lived in the city center of Hamburg, and it was a very busy street. And I started to do handwritten lists of cars I saw from top. So Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Rolls-Royce, what you see. When my parents, who were both working, needed some quietness because my mother, she worked in a lawyer's office at home with us. And so there I was just parked in the window and counted cars. I think that's my earliest memories of cars.
That's actually pretty similar to the story of mine, because when I was in kindergarten, I could kind of connect the cars arriving. I knew which kids were picked up. So yeah, it's kind of similar.
This is Ellie's my father with the Mercedes, and this is Andreas's with the BMW. That's very
pretty
cool.
Much.
But did you grow up in Germany, or where was it the way you got brought up?
Yes, so I'm from Bielefeld.
The city that does not exist?
Exactly. I've heard this joke quite a lot of times.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's fine. That's a smaller town, a bit northern. It's 300,000 people living there. And yes, then I moved to Rotterdam for my studies. Went on exchange in Singapore, which is also a big, an important mark on my car content creation story. I can tell you about that later. And after going back to Rotterdam, after my exchange, I moved to Munich.
Would it be right to say that you're more a content creator than influencer? I think influencer is a very old-fashioned word of what people like you doing, right?
Yeah, I think it's also there's a stigma about the word influencer, right? And my friends, my friends, they call me influencer just to troll me, I guess, because I don't like this word. I think it sounds weird, and I'm not trying to influence people. Maybe I'm trying to excite people, I think, but I wouldn't want to change an opinion, right? So influencing people, I don't know if that's the best thing to do, right?
I think that's very wise words. So when you say you create content, how would you describe your content?
I try to kind of take people on a journey. I think it's most important to have joy creating content, right? And I think always when I cut a video, for example, and I see myself smiling in the first sequences, I know that's a good one.
But it is still, for those who never saw one of your creations, what is the major part in it? Obviously, is cars. But how would you describe your style? It's very personal, though, yeah?
Yes. So I think there's like a few things that are important to me. And first of all, yes, it has to be like attention grabbing, right? Like people need to be curious. I say, okay, listen, let's check out the most expensive cars, the rarest cars in the recent happening. And so there's a question and people still like, there must be like a need to watch the whole video in order to get an answer to the initial question, to the hook. Then in addition to this, I think it's important to have joy, to like see that it's a good time I'm having. It's like pretty much people would maybe desire to be there as well, maybe go on the hunt themselves.
Yeah.
So I'll take them along with this. And additionally, what I also think is a great aspect, or what other people tell me is quite interesting, is that I try to put like a little bit of like nerdy bits into the videos. So like, because I think I'm not like a guy that's like superficially interested in cars. Like I'm quite like heavily into that stuff. So I try to, the little things that excite me the most, I try to kind of combine them. So it doesn't bore people, right? Like it doesn't get boring. But at the same time, you should also see that there's actually some like a bit like more depth to the videos, like a bit of a hint here, hint there, like a cool information here. Because that's kind of, I guess, what I could separate my content with like other guys who are more into the aesthetic vibes, for example.
From my understanding, the hook is always, or not always, but in the majority is the price and rarity. But then you add some further detailed information, I would say. I mean, like in one of your videos, you saw this white spec Porsche GT3 RS, and you said it doesn't look like a Weissach, but it is a Weissach. So all these kind of details, I think, are very amazing. Why do you think that your audience is so hooked and focused on the value of the car?
It's because on the hooks I often say, well, what's the most expensive? Let's find the most expensive. I often say Munich is Germany's Porsche city, for example. And I think if I talk about money, obviously it's not the most interesting thing. And it's also it is a bit more superficial than, for example, talking about just like the technical aspects or the history. But in the end, I also try to reach people that are not car experts, right? And for example, I talked to a friend of mine and he told me that the money thing is pretty much, it's like the connection between his interest or like his knowledge and the car world. Because if I tell him about the GT3 RS, that's a Weissach paket and it doesn't look like, and it's a great spec and this and that. It's all interesting, but it's pretty hard for him to translate this into his own world, right? But he probably has his own interests. He knows how much a house is. Maybe he's into real estate or watches. Yeah. So this kind of connects this to it. So he knows, okay, there's this interesting part about it, but what does it mean actually? So people who are not car nerds as I am are probably a bit more eager to see, okay, what's the translation into cars in the same worth, I guess.
Yes, it's always like, okay, we reduce everything to the value, but as we know, it seems to be a driver and interest, so why not talking about it? It would definitely not be my style, but I really understand why it works.
Do you not check values on for example, we talked about you have a few cars that you like.
Yeah.
And do you check like market values, how they develop and stuff?
No, actually not.
Really? Okay.
No. That's a point I'm not interested in. If I like something that I can afford, I buy it. I don't really care.
What do you think, like percentage? How many people are not interested at all in the values of the cars in the classic car scene?
5%.
Yeah, 95% are interested, right?
Yes. But I still believe that only applies to those people who are really like actually buying and selling very often and like keeping their collections alive. For the majority of people who are super excited about cars, I think the price is just a minor thing, sometimes a problem because might be too high. In my opinion, they go more for the way of, I would like to have a car that represents my values, in a sense, my aesthetics, the history of a car. So I think this is much more important than just the price. Tom, you're running tomsdrive since a year now, and you reached more than 100,000 followers on TikTok, and I think a similar number on Instagram as well. Tell us more how it all started, please.
Yes, so I went to Singapore on exchange, and I've done other stuff where I didn't talk, just took a video and just threw it on TikTok, and I don't know, the views didn't really mean anything to me.
Yeah.
But then when I moved to Singapore, obviously the car scene is very unique. Have you ever been there?
Singapore, yes. I was quite a while in Hong Kong, so Singapore was always a quick stopover.
Yeah, so great city, very humid, which I couldn't really work with. But in the end, the car scene is very unique as well, because cars are very expensive. They're taxed very highly. And for example, if you buy a BMW 3 Series, 330i, you'll probably spend close to 300,000 euros just because there's so much tax on these cars.
Crazy.
And additionally, there's the COE, it's called. It's about 100 Singaporean dollars, which is like 70,000 euros. For a 10-year license to be allowed to drive the car that gets on top of this. So yes, as you can tell, cars are very expensive. Still, there's so many great cars driving around, which is obviously very interesting. How does this work? What cars are driving around? And it's a very good hook.
Yes.
Hey, I'm the most expensive city in the world. Let's see how expensive cars are. So I've started it there, just randomly on the streets. And then I went to a Ferrari dealership where I said the same, like, hey, let's check out how expensive it is to buy a Ferrari in the most expensive city in the world. And obviously it's very expensive. For like a regular Ferrari, which would be 250 here, it gets quite close to $1 million there.
Yeah.
And this video went pretty viral, I would say, in Singapore, because in the end it's a very small city or country. I think it got like 600, 700,000 views out of nowhere.
Wow.
And this pretty much covers a lot of the Singaporean car culture. I've done a few more, and then clubs started reaching out to me and so on. And pretty much from there on, I was the blonde car guy in Singapore for a while.
And I mean, much taller than many other people, I would say.
Yeah, so it was actually quite funny. Like quite a few people, like from like smaller car spotters, because many car spotters, they're between like 12 and 16, I would say.
Yeah.
They like came to me, they asked for a picture, and they was like, whoa, what's going on here?
Because we have to say, you're over 2 meters, or is it close to 2 meters?
I'm 2 meters.
Yeah, you see? So the automotive giant in many ways. But your time in Singapore, how would you describe the Singapore car culture? Of course, you just said it, it's very limited because also the licenses are limited. So it's not that you can have 8 to 10 cars easily. You can be lucky if you have a license for 2 or 3 cars. That's what I understood from a friend who lived in Singapore.
Yeah, that's true. So the car culture is very unique. And yes, but how would I describe it? I think people are still very open. Like even though the cars there, for example, I met up with a few owners, quite a lot of owners actually, just for content. They picked me up, we went for a drive, we talked about the car. And these guys were so friendly, like really on the same level. And I don't feel like this is the same in Germany as well. Not in a negative way, but they're a bit more proud of what they've achieved, I guess. But in Singapore, they're very humble. And the car culture, it's a bit hidden.
Yeah.
But if you like get to it, the people are so enthusiastic, they're so into it. And obviously, because they do have to make a big effort in order to get the car, to repair the car, and so on. It's a right-hand drive market, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work that goes into it, which reflects in the passion that people have for their cars.
And if you compare it now to the German culture, are the Singaporeans also show-off people, or do they keep their cars more quiet?
I would say they definitely also show off. So what's pretty funny in Singapore, it's the up-badging thingy. So they like to up-badge their cars, and most of the AMGs, the M's, and so on, they're not actually AMGs, right? You can tell from the fenders, because this is where it gets expensive to do it. Still, there's a few who like kind of convert their 5 Series to an M5 full on, except for the brakes, for example. You check out the brakes and they're tiny.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing in Singapore. You're never sure if the car you're seeing is actually like the big deal. Yes, because Singapore, again, it's a society that's very much based on money.
Yeah.
It's an important part. Like the real estate market is very unique. Everything's so expensive. You have these pretty much comparably cheap countries all around. And it's very much about career and like social structures. So I think cars, they do play a big, big role, even though it kind of seems like the government doesn't want them to.
And now Munich is your home base. And we have to now come to our discussion point, because I would like to argue one point, because in the videos, you always favor Munich as the most posh car city. You say in Germany, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to pitch in, and it's very tough for me. I would like to pitch in Düsseldorf, and I would like to, of course, which is the winner, Hamburg. Did you ever did shootings in other cities than Munich, besides Singapore?
I have. So I've actually, when I was younger, I also did like the classic car spotting. So back in, I think probably like 2014, for example, I did a trip with a few friends. We went to London for a weekend because there's the Arab season. You know what that is?
No, tell me.
So a lot of Arabs, they fly their cars over to London during summer and just to flex, I guess, to have a good time. And so the streets are packed with insane cars. Lots of them are like hypercars, modified, and pretty much Knightsbridge, London turns into a car show, like even more back in the days than nowadays, because it's a bit more restricted, obviously. So London is great. I think it's probably up there. But in Germany, I think you're wrong there. I think Munich is the best city, just because people are actually driving their classic cars on an everyday base, which in Düsseldorf doesn't happen. Düsseldorf is probably a bit more flashy. You have the many AMG cars, many M cars, and the Königsallee that are up and down. But in Munich, you just see people living their life in their classic car, which I think is a very unique thingy. And I'm not sure if it's the same case in Hamburg.
100%.
Is it?
Obviously. Yes, it is. I mean, if the sun comes out, you see all the cool cars on the roads in Hamburg. I mean, you've been to Hamburg with Audi, I think, for a shoot.
Exactly.
And you did also a tour, and you were quite amazed as far as I remember.
I was, but I must say Hamburg is a bit more low-key. The colors were not as exciting, and colors are important to me. I'm a big color guy. And additionally, I think Munich or like southern Germany is just more of a car place, right? We have BMW, we have Audi quite close. Then we have in Baden-Württemberg, we have Porsche, Mercedes. So in that sense, there's just a lot more going on. And we have more test mules, which I think is also very exciting to see.
This the latter point I accept. The test mules that's something we don't have in Hamburg. But then I have to say that, yes, I mean, one of our guests was Simon Kitson, and he has this phrase, colors make cars. And I think that's absolutely right. So what is your favorite color on a car?
Obviously, a dark green always works with silver wheels, which are very important to me. I don't like black wheels at all. And an interesting interior, maybe a matching green interior. But in the end, I think it kind of everybody likes dark green nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And recently I've gotten into like a metallic brown, which I think like a very good brown is a great color. Maybe combine that with a cream interior, silver wheels, and a high spec, a lot of leather. I think that's the way to go. What do you think?
Yeah, so Morone works always nice. Hazelnut stuff, that's cool. I think that's also something that's coming more and more, becoming also a trend in a sense. So more darker colors now. I think that something like these non-metallic light blues and things like this.
Do you know Sanford Blue?
Yes. I don't know if it's an original BMW color, but I saw an M2 in this light blue color, right? And I think that works very well. I don't know for how long, but at the moment that works.
I've been on a trip with BMW the last 3 days.
Yeah.
And there was an M3 Touring, which also went pretty viral on social media. It was painted in Borusan Turkish blue. And this was on white wheels, which obviously made it a bit more poppy as well.
Sure. I mean, everything goes like into this Fast and Furious color modes. I think JDM color modes are very like on European cars at the moment as well.
Also, what I think is a great trend, for example, like a lot of cars from the 70s, 80s, that like a silver with a bit of a hue.
Yes.
Right? Like a bit of a green, a bit of a purple, for example.
Yes.
I think that's an amazing, like that looks so amazing, and it's very rare to see those nowadays.
That's also very, very big. I agree. And do you remember at Marks and Cars, we had this first 5 Series in this lemon yellow? Like,
yes.
I mean, in this time, people were so much into colors. I don't know why. Maybe because the world outside was a bit grayish because of all this fumes from the industry and things like this.
Yeah, that's an interesting thesis you have there, that back then maybe everything else was a bit more gray. If I think about it, it's pretty hard to imagine, I think. I think nowadays everything's gray, right? And for me, obviously I didn't live back then, so I can't really compare it.
Obviously. Thank you for making me so old.
But to me, it seems like back then it was a bit more colorful, everything. And people were just, like, they didn't really care that much, even when getting like an expensive 5 Series, whether the color was cool next year. They just enjoyed it being in a nice color, like just having a bit more of an attraction in their everyday life, I guess.
You know, and there we come back to the value thing. In my opinion, it started all with the value, how can I resell my car? And I remember that in the 90s, there was this index saying, okay, the most valuable cars are keeping their value are cars in silver. Of course, everyone bought a silver car because they always were thinking about the next step.
Well, I think there's a change in this happening, no?
Yes, absolutely. No, luckily.
There's like PTS, Porsche Paint to Sample, BMW Individual, Audi Exclusive, and so on. You have, I think, at least in the enthusiastic space, there's a big interest in cars. And I think also with Ferrari, you used to say resale red. And from what I understand, it kind of changed that kind of colors make cars.
Yes, 100%. I mean, some red Ferraris work very well. I like also to see it in different colors, like the Armors one in dark green and one of these other guys in this, what was it like? Turquoise styled color.
The one at Schaltkulisse?
Yeah, the Schaltkulisse car, exactly. Even not original colors, they look also very well. But then again, for me, example, a Giallo F430 doesn't look very good. For me, this car has to be red. Funny enough. I think this goes with the shape as well. So the shape of the car, so the exterior design, the greenhouse, everything has to be fitting to a color.
That is true. Also, colors can help to make the cars look a bit slimmer, a bit more dynamic. For example, for a car that's very huge and you kind of want to hide all the size and the weight, for example, a metallic color can work very well because you have these high, like light touches and the dark spots which kind of hide the weight. So I'll be careful when choosing.
It's a composition in the end. Like any designed object, it needs to be a composition of all these things.
What do you think about color changing? I know there's like concept cars where you can kind of like BMW ID or something it's called or so.
Yeah.
And you have these color changing thingies. Obviously the whole car wouldn't be able to change color, but maybe parts of it or so. Do you think that's a cool idea?
I think it is a very cool idea. And I mean, with the iVision D, BMW presented a car that's completely changeable through an app with this new technology where they have surfaces that change colors and can show movements and little clips or whatever. I mean, the car starts communicating with the outside world. So you can give it a human touch. You can project your avatar on it. All these kind of things, all controlled by an iPhone. And I'm quite sure we were going to see more of that because the wish for expressing your personality or how you feel it or what's your aesthetics, I think this technology will help a lot for that. And I think it's a great way moving forward. What about you?
I think it's great. Talking trends, I would like to know your opinion on one thing, that is resto mods. Because there's a lot of resto mods coming out and I would like to know your 2 cents on it.
I'm not sure if BMW will approve what I'm saying now. But to be honest, the new version of the BMW 3.0 CSL, technically speaking, is kind of a resto mod. And I have to say, I like that car. I like it for one reason, because I saw it live and they showed it in Villa d'Este as the homage car. And I went to Adrian van Hooijdonk and said, Adrian, it would be so cool if you built this car. And he said, yeah, let's see. And then by a bit of time later, they came out. And I know a collection that I have visited recently where one of the cars is parked and it looks so good. That's my opinion. I don't know. How do you feel it?
The one, like the design study you're talking about.
Yes.
So one thing for me is I think they used the wrong base. They used the 4 Series, the M4.
Yes.
And to me, like just the wheelbase and nowadays where obviously it kind of matches to the old car.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a mid-sized car. It was rather, I think this initial concept from like 2014 or so looked amazing. The one they had like with the BMW livery and also like in a yellow, right?
Yes.
With these special taillights where they go up to the spoiler or so.
Yeah.
Wow. But I think this one was based on the 6 Series or whatever, like a longer wheelbase. And yeah, to me, it's kind of like if you cut corners and put it on a 4 Series and keep this and keep that and have a few fake vents, it's kind of tough to justify a million euros. I'm not a big fan of the car, I must say. But I mean, I like the fact that it's there. I think it's just a little overpriced. And if you go so far and revive this legend, maybe it should have been based on an 8 Series chassis. I don't know, maybe.
No, there we disagree because I think it was the right choice of base because if you look also back in the history of the car, it was always meant as a sporty coupe, right? And not as a 6 Series coupe at that time, like a 635 or something like this. So it was always the little brother. And I think it is well executed. It looks brutal in a sense, like there's much going on. This one you can argue if you like it or don't like it. But I think it was the right choice. And again, I love it to have a disagreement as well, because it would be boring if you have all the same opinion and praise the same things. So I really appreciate the openness and the words, because that makes a conversation like this valuable, right? But speaking about BMW, and you mentioned just a little tour you did. How did that happen? So do you own a BMW M3 Touring?
I don't, unfortunately.
Wow.
I wish
Welcome
I did.
to the club.
I wish I did. But yes, we did this content tour and we drove a few cars. Everybody got the chance to drive like all the cars. Mm-hmm. And there was an M4 CS, which was very interesting to drive. The M3 Touring, which was, a big surprise to me. And a few other cars, M3 Comp, and so on. But that's been so great. Unfortunately, there was also an M4, like a manual M4 planned, but this didn't work out, which I would have loved to like see what a modern manual sports car drives like, and I've never driven one. But pretty amazing. So, and you said that you were surprised by the M4, right? M3 Touring. By the M3 Touring, but you were surprised, you said at the beginning you were surprised by one car? The M4 CS and the M3 Touring were both amazing to drive. Yeah, and what makes the CS so special for you? What made it so special? So it was very interesting to compare, because we've driven both the M4 Competition and the CS, and looking from the outside, there's like these special editions which maybe have a splitter more, they have yellow DRLs, and from the outside it seems a bit of like a marketing trick, but driving them, you actually notice what a big difference it is. So I've started driving the M3 Touring, and I was very impressed, like how sporty this car was. You really forget you're in a family car and you have all these modes. Yes. For like four-wheel drive sports, two-wheel drive, and so on. And then the next day I've driven the M4 CS, which was like such a snappy car and so much fun to drive. And then after the lunch break, I jumped back into an M4. Still, it was very sporty, but you notice the difference. The braking, the steering, the power, like the traction. You really notice how much more power the M4 CS has over the normal one. Yeah. And that was so interesting to compare like side by side. I mean, this is also a nice perk what the brands are making possible for you as content creators, right? That you have the chance. I mean, that was something that we as journalists had, of course, in the past as well. So we could ask for, say, we want to do a photo story about this and that car, that model, and then you requested it and you were kindly given it by the brand and you can drive it. But I think it's also very important that the brands understand how important content creators are for also building an image. And exactly what you just did is being very honest about your opinion. And I can only encourage you to be not one of those who tell always, oh, that's great, that's great, that's great, that's great, that's great. Yes, that's the thingy. Like, I feel like in a few videos, I'm a bit too negative. You just get into like a negative vibe and you forget about talking like in a balanced way. But that's always a thing, because obviously, like if you're doing content creation, the brands, they are interested in working with you. And because there are so many content creators, it feels like, okay, you better behave, so you'll be invited the next time. So a lot of content creators are very positive about everything that's happening and all the cars, which I also don't really get. Yeah, I think it's generic. I don't need that. I want an honest opinion, and so I value that. I always prefer the way to have like cool criticism and honest, positive ideas. And if we look back on Classic Drive, we've always had the best results when we set our honest opinion in a fair way. And for us, criticism is normally that we don't talk about it. Like one thing that's a bit tough when talking about new cars is that, for example, if you get invited to this great event, everything's paid for. It's the most expensive hotel in the city for some reason, and very nice like location, the car's new. It's a privilege to be there. There's designers standing next to you pretty much when you talk about the car. Yeah. And I think this is how like all this, only positive stuff. No, because in the end, you're like in a company bubble there and you're like privileged to be there. And it's a bit weird because they've put so much effort in you being there and you feel like maybe they could exchange me. So I better not talk negatively. And if you talk negatively, they're standing there like there's a designer, there's an engineer and so on. And they're like listening and kind of disagreeing. And I think that's the same with like journalism for new cars. If you're getting invited there and the head of design gives you a speech about why he did this and that, I think especially for young people, it's pretty tough to disagree and kind of not get the glasses. put on by the brand.
So everyone who's tuned in and plans a career in content creation or is in that pathway, I think we both can say, try to be honest with your opinion, respectful and honest, and that will carry on the best way. You can't go there and say, how stupid a brand is, or how this and that, how could you do that, all these kind of things. And journalists have sometimes, in rare cases, this tendency. And I don't support that, because you need to be respectful and polite in the way you form your criticism, I think.
For sure. Do you think new cars get better?
Yes, I think so. I do a jump now, but I always this discussion about electric cars and non-electric cars. They have to have an ICU, otherwise there are no cars, blah, blah, blah. I'm not into that. But as everyone knows, the i3 for me is one of the best city cars on this planet. It was one of the coolest electric cars when everyone was in the starting grid. They came out with this car made with so much thoughts into, okay, we use recycled materials to build the dashboard, and we use the option of having a non-organic leather and all these kind of things. I understand if people say that's not a good-looking car, but for me, it's just the perfect city car and good-looking.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think also the i8 was very much overseen for what it's been.
I
Like,
agree.
It was a very great car, and I also realized very late. But I think it's a numbers thingy again. Like, if you see a sports car from BMW, I've listened to very cool podcast with the ex-head of design at BMW. He talked about like the sports car topic at BMW.
Yeah.
Because many people say, hey, BMW needs a sports car, right? And the i8, so many people are disappointed. There's a two-door car, it looks like a sports car and so on, and apparently it's not the sportiest thing ever. And like looking back at it, probably, it was 300-something HP in the beginning, 380 or so, but it was so quick. And like I think it was like 1.5 tons for a hybrid car.
Yeah,
which nowadays is not achieved again. Like it's very impressive, and I think 4.2 seconds 0 to 100 with less than 400 horsepower. That's unparalleled.
Yeah, some cars need some time to get the appreciation in the end because they're so new, they're so radical. Imagine when the 7 Series came out with this most criticized design,
The Chris Bangle.
Yeah, the Chris Bangle, which was actually designed by a whole team, but I mean this car. And then you saw elements of this you saw with other brands 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah.
If you look at the 5 Series of the same era, then you have to say that the 5 Series still looks modern today. I just saw one here in Berlin.
The E60?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I just saw it here on the road, and it still looks very modern. And but I'm not sure if we could check the archives and speak to someone at BMW if that was a success. But I think it was criticized as well, because we have the tendency, everything that's outside a conformity or something like this, in a sense, like out of the box, which is completely new, we criticize.
I think, also like the E60, maybe there's a parallel to the new 5 Series, because it looks so modern today, proportion-wise. It looks pretty much like from the size, almost like a recent car, even though all the cars are getting bigger and bigger, and usually cars from 10, 15 years ago look so much smaller. Same goes for the current like 5 and 7 Series. They also look a bit bigger, right? Like they're huge cars. M5 is 5 meters 10, which is honestly like, which is a very large car. But maybe in 10 years, they will look modern, or like just like the E60 will kind of translate, assuming that the growth will continue, which actually I hope it won't.
Tom, we could go on like this for hours talking car design. But I would like to invite you to our pit stop, which is a short series of questions. And I would really encourage you to have a very short answer for me, like not thinking too much. And I give you 2 options and you can choose one of the options. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, pit stop for Tom. 4 wheels or 2 wheels?
4 wheels.
Coupe or limousine?
Limousine.
Mint condition or enthusiastically driven condition?
Mint condition.
Driving alone or driving with passengers?
Driving with passengers for sure.
Driving or being driven?
Driving.
Car sharing or no car?
Car sharing.
Road trip or racetrack?
Road trip for sure.
Autobahn or country road?
Country road, definitely.
Stick shift or pedals?
Wow, I don't know much about it, to be honest. I think I'm going for pedals because I like modern cars and it fits the whole package.
Accepted. Petrol or diesel?
Petrol for sure.
Diesel or electric?
Diesel. I think a big, good old diesel is very exciting, especially a V8 one.
Modern diesel maybe as well. Electric or no car?
Electric, definitely.
Engine in the front or in the back?
In the front. I like the charismatic proportions of a front engine car.
Engine in the front or in the middle?
In the front as well. I think it's a very charismatic proportion.
Left-hand drive or right-hand drive?
Left-hand drive.
Right-hand drive or center drive?
Center drive. That would be something I would like to I would like to experience for sure.
Yeah. Sell or keep?
Sell. I think I would switch cars regularly.
And then buy at auction or at a dealership?
Buy at a dealership. I wouldn't like to be influenced by an auction. I think that would be very bad for me.
Radio on or off while driving?
Both on and off, but preferably my own playlist.
Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram.
Thank you very much. That was our little pit stop. I have 2 questions on that one. We spoke about the stick shift or pedals, and you said you don't have experience. What was the last time you rode a shifter?
There was a Porsche 356 Speedster, in fact. So
that's a good start.
Yeah. Very tough. And honestly, I didn't know where the gears were. Like, really, how would you know? It's literally searching, cooking up, and can't find the gears. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, very good. And then you said driving with passengers. That's what you preferred. Funny enough, the majority of people who answer our guests answering that they want to drive alone. Mm-hmm. And you're one of the few with passengers. So is it like the whole experience of sharing?
I think cars, for me in general, it's about the vibe, which is also why I'm saying I don't need to be on the racetrack. It's pretty much about the feeling they give to you, and a feeling shared with a friend. Yeah, it's double the feeling if you want so, right? It's it's an experience, and who wants to experience great things alone? Or what do you think?
I always drive with people. I like that as well. It's all about the experience. I agree. And you said center drive. So McLaren F1, would that be on your list of the all-time favorite to drive one time?
Yes, please. And I have a hot take. I think it's heavily overrated.
Is it?
How can it be so expensive? It can't be like, why? Just the fact that it's so hyped takes hype away from me.
Yeah.
Or did you ever drive one? I have no experience, but to me, it's a small car that's very interesting. But it's how can it be 20 million bucks?
Short answer, because people pay the price, and no, I haven't driven it. But this is a shout out to all who own a McLaren F1 and want to take Tom for a drive everywhere around the world, because I'm sure he will be traveling for this. Tom, this was our episode with you, Tom Osterwald, better known as Tom's Drive on TikTok and Instagram. Thank you very much, Tom, for joining us today, and it was a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JP. Thanks to the whole team. It was a pleasure, and can't wait for more car content on the classic side to happen.
You mentioned the word team, and yes, team is very important because there is a great team behind this podcast, and I would like to give them the credits they deserve. Friederike von Königswald, who is our editor, who makes sure that we don't talk too much nonsense and always has an eye on the right things we say, and that's very appreciated. Then we have Scenario Studio in Munich, where Tom is now sitting, and we made this record. Alex and Marcus, thank you very much. Also, they make us sound very well. And we have Robin Seiser in the background, who's taking care as a producer that all the loose ends are together. And if you like what you hear, please do us a favor. Subscribe on the platform you're using to listen to this podcast. Leave comments when it's possible on the platform you're using. And also, please leave us likes there and spread the word that this podcast might be interesting for car fans. Also, I would like to invite you, every single one of you, if you have an idea who would be a brilliant guest for our podcast, plus maybe you are the right guest for this podcast, please send us an email and explain to us why you think you or any other person or topic might be very interesting to discuss in the Classic Heart podcast. The email address goes as follow: BMW Group -classic @shot-1.de. So that's all. We're waiting for your emails, and we hope that you have a great time listening to this podcast. And Tom, thank you, and keep your strong opinion. I really appreciate that.
Will do. Thanks, JP. Passion and love.
Of course. Here we go. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.